In the village of Umadara, where red earth kissed bare feet and the wind carried the smell of firewood and roasted corn, lived a boy no one truly saw. His name was Kola, but few ever spoke it. He was known instead as that boy, the quiet one who ran errands and listened more than he spoke. Children laughed loudly around him, yet never with him. Elders spoke wisdom near him, yet never to him. Kola had learned early that silence was safer than expectation. Every morning before the sun rose, Kola fetched water from the stream that lay beyond the irako trees. He would pause there, staring at his reflection rippling on the surface, wondering if the water saw him more clearly than the people did. His mother had died seasons ago, his father long forgotten by the village after leaving to chase a dream that never returned. So Kola lived with his aunt, who fed him, but never fed his hope. At night, when the village gathered to tell stories by firelight, Kola sat at the edge of the circle. He listened to tales of warriors, kings, and ancestors who shaped the land with courage. He wondered silently if the ancestors ever noticed boys like him. Boys without titles. Boys without strength. Boys without a place. Yet deep inside Kola was something he did not understand, a quiet pull toward sound. Whenever drums echoed during festivals, his chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. As if something ancient was calling him by name, even when the world refused to. And though he did not know it then, the village that ignored him was slowly walking toward a story it would never forget. Beyond Umadara stood a crumbling shrine, swallowed by weeds and silence. The elders warned children never to go there. They said it was old, older than memory, and held things better left undisturbed. One evening, chasing a lost goat, Kola found himself standing before it. The air felt heavier there, as if time itself paused to watch him. Inside the shrine, wrapped in dust and shadow, rested a drum. It was carved from dark wood, its surface marked with symbols Kola did not recognize but somehow understood. He reached out without thinking. The moment his fingers touched the drum's skin, the wind rushed through the shrine and the earth trembled softly beneath his feet. A voice, not loud, not frightening, spoke within him. I remember those who are forgotten. Kola pulled his hand away, heart pounding. He wanted to run. But something stronger than fear held him still. The drum seemed warm, alive. He lifted it, surprised by how light it felt, as though it wanted to be carried. When Kola struck it gently, the sound was unlike anything he had heard. It was not just noise, it was memory. The walls of the shrine whispered. Images flooded his mind, ancestors dancing, villages rising, people healing, children laughing. The drum was not cursed. It was waiting. As Kola left the shrine, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fire. He did not know what the drum would bring. But for the first time in his life, something had chosen him. That night, as Kola played the drum behind his aunt's hut, something stirred in Umadara. Dogs stopped barking. Fires flickered strangely. People paused mid-conversation, feeling an ache they could not name. The drum's rhythm was slow, steady, like a heartbeat long missed. Kola did not know how to play. His hands moved on their own. Each beat carried emotion, joy, sorrow, hope, pain. Mothers felt memories of children they had lost. Elders remembered promises they never kept. Even the chief woke from sleep with tears on his face. By morning, the village buzzed with unease. The elders gathered and spoke of omens. Someone mentioned the forbidden shrine. Fear crept into their words. They decided the drum must be destroyed. But when they came for Kola, they found him surrounded by children who had never spoken to him before, listening quietly as he played. The drum had done something no voice ever could. It made people listen. The village square had never been so quiet. Elders sat in a wide circle, their walking sticks pressed into the red earth, their faces heavy with fear and uncertainty. Women stood behind them, whispering prayers under their breath. Children clung to their mothers' wrappers, sensing that something important, something dangerous, was about to unfold. At the center of it all stood Kola, barefoot, trembling, clutching the ancient drum to his chest as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. Accusations came swiftly. Some called him arrogant for touching what was forbidden. Others whispered the word witchcraft like a curse carried on the wind. A few demanded punishment, saying the boy had disturbed what the ancestors buried for a reason. Kola opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. Years of being ignored had taught him silence more fluently than words. The chief rose slowly, his voice calm but firm. "Let us not judge what we do not understand," he said. Then he turned to Kola. "If this drum truly carries the past, let it speak now." Kola's hands shook as he lowered the drum. His heart pounded so loudly he feared it would drown out everything else. When his palm struck the skin, the sound that followed was deep and alive. It rolled across the square like distant thunder. The wind shifted. Fires flickered. The air grew warm, heavy with memory. Suddenly, the elders saw visions. Ancestors appeared, not angry, but weary. They saw promises broken, voices silenced, kindness replaced by pride. Mothers wept. Warriors lowered their heads. The drum was not accusing, it was remembering. When the final echo faded, silence returned, thicker than before. The elders could no longer meet Kola's eyes. Slowly, one by one, they bowed their heads. The boy they had dismissed was standing at the center of their truth. And in that moment, Umadara understood, the drum was never the danger. Forgetting was. The drought did not arrive suddenly. It crept into Umadara like a quiet warning no one wanted to hear. At first, the mornings were only a little hotter. Then the river that once sang through the valley began to whisper. Leaves curled inward, surrendering their green to dust. Each day, the sky rose higher, wider, and more empty than the day before. Fields cracked open like broken pottery. Goats bleated weakly. Mothers measured food with trembling hands. Night after night, the elders gathered, their voices heavy with fear. For the first time in many seasons, the village had no answer. And so they turned to Kola. They came to him not with kindness, but with desperation. "Play the drum," they urged. "Call the ancestors. Bring back the rain." Their eyes were sharp with expectation, as though the boy owed them a miracle. Kola carried the drum to the center of the village. The people formed a wide circle, watching, waiting, hoping. He closed his eyes and struck the drum. Nothing. He tried again. Silence answered him. The drum that once spoke with thunder now felt cold beneath his palms. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Doubt crept in like a shadow. Fear sharpened into blame. That night, alone beneath the stars, Kola knelt and touched the drum with shaking hands. The familiar voice returned, quiet but firm. The drum does not answer fear. It answers truth. Kola understood then. The village had bowed only when afraid, not when it was wrong. They had remembered the ancestors with their mouths, but not with their actions. The drum was not broken, the people were divided from its spirit. At dawn, Kola stood before Umudara and spoke for the first time without trembling. "Rain will not come because we beg," he said. "It will come when we change." His words hung in the dry air, heavy as the clouds they longed for. And the village realized the drought was not only in their fields, it was in their hearts. Change did not come with celebration. It came quietly, like the first drop of rain touching dry earth. The people of Umudara began with what they had avoided for years, truth. Elders called meetings not to command, but to listen. Old grudges were spoken aloud, no longer hidden behind polite silence. Apologies were offered where pride once stood. Some words were difficult, some tears unavoidable, but each moment peeled away a layer of hardness the drought had revealed. Families shared food without being asked. A widow who had been ignored was invited back into the circle of evening fires. Children were taught the names of those they had once mocked. The village paths felt different beneath their feet, as though the land itself was listening, waiting to see if this change was real. Kola moved among them, not as a leader above, but as a reminder within. He did not demand obedience. He only watched. And when he felt the village shift, not in fear, but in sincerity, he carried the drum to the open field beyond the Irako trees. The sky was still clear. No clouds gathered. No wind announced itself. Yet when Kola struck the drum, the sound returned, deep, steady, alive. It did not cry out in power. It breathed. The earth answered with a low rumble, almost gentle, almost grateful. Hours later, clouds formed on the horizon, slow and heavy. The first drops of rain fell hesitantly, then with purpose. People lifted their faces, laughing and crying at once. The land drank deeply. Seeds long buried stirred awake. Kola stood quietly in the rain, the drum resting against his side. He understood then that the miracle was not the rain. It was the change that invited it. The village had learned what the ancestors had always known: humility restores what force never can. After the rain returned, Umudara no longer spoke of Kola in whispers. His name moved freely through the village now, carried on laughter, on greetings, on quiet respect. Children no longer pointed at him from a distance, they ran to him, calling his name with ease, as though they had always known it. Elders invited him to sit among them, not as a child, but as someone whose presence carried meaning. Yet Kola did not change the way he walked. He still fetched water at dawn. he still sat at the edge of the fire at night. The difference was not in how he lived, but in how the village looked at him. For the first time, Kola was not invisible. Stories began to grow around him. Some said the drum chose him because he was pure. Others said the ancestors had marked him at birth. Kola listened to these words with care, then gently set them aside. "I was chosen because I listened," he said. "The drum did not make me special. It reminded you of yourselves." The drum rested near him during gatherings, but he no longer played it often. Its presence alone was enough. When disputes arose, people did not ask for miracles. They asked for understanding. When pride threatened to rise again, someone would glance at the drum, and the moment would soften. Kola became a keeper of stories, not of power. He taught children the names of ancestors and the cost of forgetting. He reminded elders that wisdom must bend or it breaks. And though the village honored him, Kola never claimed a throne, never wore a title. Because he had learned something Umadara would carry long after the drum fell silent, true recognition is not being seen above others, it is being seen within them. And in that knowing, the boy who once had no name became a name the village spoke with gratitude, not fear. The day the drum fell silent did not announce itself with signs or warnings. There was no dream, no voice in the night, no sudden shift in the wind. It was an ordinary morning, soft with mist, when Kola lifted the drum and felt the stillness resting inside it. The warmth that once lived beneath the skin was gone. Not cold, just complete. As though the drum had finished speaking everything it needed to say. Kola carried it beyond the village, past the fields now green with life, back toward the forgotten shrine where their story had first begun. Each step felt heavier, not with sorrow, but with understanding. Some things are not meant to stay. Some gifts arrive only long enough to teach. The shrine stood quiet, wrapped in vines and time. Kola knelt and placed the drum where it had waited for generations. He did not ask it to speak again. He did not thank it aloud. He simply rested his forehead against the earth, honoring what had passed between them. When Kola returned, the village noticed the absence immediately. The drum no longer sat near the fire. Its shadow no longer stretched across the gatherings. A hush settled over Umadara, not fear, but reflection. The people realized then that the drum had never been their strength. It had only revealed it. Life continued. Rain came and went. Seasons turned. And though no sound echoed from the shrine, the rhythm remained, in shared meals, in honest words, in kindness offered without reward. The drum had returned to silence, but its lesson had not. It lived on in every choice the village made, reminding them that true power does not shout. It teaches, then steps away. Years passed in Umadara, not loudly, but steadily, like a river that had learned its course. Children who once listened wide-eyed to the sound of the drum now grew into adults who spoke its lessons without realizing where they had learned them. The shrine remained untouched, quiet beneath its blanket of vines, no longer feared, no longer worshipped. It simply existed, as memory should. Kola grew older, his hair dusted with gray long before his spirit felt its weight. He never spoke of the drum unless asked, and even then, he spoke gently, as one speaks of rain after a long drought. He taught the young not how to summon miracles, but how to live in a way that never needed them. When disagreements arose, the people no longer searched for signs or omens. They sat together and talked. When someone was forgotten or pushed aside, others remembered how dangerous that forgetting once was. Compassion became habit, not ceremony. Respect was no longer demanded, it was practiced. Visitors sometimes came from distant villages, having heard rumors of a magical drum that once saved Umadara. They asked to see it, to hear its power. Kola would smile and shake his head. "You are too late," he would say. It finished its work. And though the visitors left disappointed, the village remained whole. They had learned what many never do, that the greatest transformations leave no monument behind. No sound. No spectacle. Only people who choose differently. On quiet evenings, when the wind moved through the trees just right, some claimed they felt a rhythm beneath the stillness. Not a drumbeat, but a memory of one. A reminder that legacy is not what is heard, but what is lived. And in Umadara, the silence spoke louder than any drum ever could. Long after Kola's footsteps slowed and his voice softened with age, Umadara remained awake to its own conscience. New generations were born who never heard the drum and never felt its sound roll through their bones. Yet somehow, they lived as though they had. They learned early to listen before judging, to remember before dismissing, to look twice at the quiet one standing at the edge of the circle. When Kola finally passed, there was no great ceremony, no loud mourning that shook the sky. The village gathered in simple silence. Stories were shared. Lessons repeated. And in that stillness, they understood something profound. Kola had become what the drum once was, a reminder. Seasons continued their endless turning. Sometimes hardship returned, as it always does. But when it did, the people no longer searched for magic hidden in forgotten places. They searched themselves. They asked hard questions. They chose humility over pride, unity over fear. Travelers who passed through Umadara often spoke of its calm, of a strange peace that lingered even in difficulty. When asked its source, the villagers would smile and say, "We learned to remember." No one mentioned the drum. No one needed to. And it is said, quietly, without certainty, that when another village forgets its humanity, when pride grows louder than compassion, the wind carries a distant rhythm across the land. Not to be heard by everyone. Only by the forgotten. Only by those who are listening. Because stories like this do not end. They move. They wait. And somewhere, even now, another quiet soul stands at the edge of a circle, about to be seen, about to be chosen, not by magic, but by meaning.